How's everyone doing? So, a lot of the same questions that streamers, gamers, and people that I see in real life or virtually, all of you guys ask pretty much the same question about video editing. Which video editor do I use, and how do I edit videos? The best answer is iMovie and Windows Movie Maker. Thanks for watching this video. See you guys later. What? You guys aren't happy with this answer? You're telling me that Windows Movie Maker is no longer available to download? You could try using those like app thingies from Microsoft or Apple Store to edit your video if you guys want. What about the default video editor on your computer? Not good enough for you? Okay, since you guys are still watching this video and you guys don't seem to be very happy with that answer, we will go over some of the professional video editors out there that you guys can use, but we're going to look at them from a borderline hobbyist, professional, kind of standard point of view, not from a Steven Spielberg or Michael Bay standpoint, but from a creator's view. Well, maybe you want to be a YouTuber, vlogger like everyone else, or a cringy Instagram, TikTok star. Maybe you want to edit Let's Play video games, or maybe you just need a good video editor for whatever project you have and you want to get into video. The most important thing to look in a video editor is how much does it cost, the workflow or how easy it is for you to get the job done. You pick the right tool for the job, and time. How long does it take for you to get everything done? I will have a table of contents on the side to make it easier for you guys. First, we have iMovie, Windows Movie Maker, or whatever the default video editor you have on your computer. I would highly recommend anybody who is new to video editing to start out with this for a week. Why? Because it is simple and easy to use and it's free. A lot of times I see people go into like complicated software, then they get all confused, they spend a whole bunch of time figuring stuff out, and they don't even know if they like video editing. By using the simple default video editor, you don't have to worry about figuring out all the complicated layers, this and that, gaps in your video clips, endpoints or whatever. This is perfectly fine to start out with and learn how to get used to things. After a week, once you figure everything out, you can move on to something better. If you actually want to continue learning how to edit videos, this way you don't waste too much money and time, and the things you learned won't be lost. In the first category, we have video editors with a question mark. In Hitfilm, we have a standard timeline like every other video editor, where you can cut or split videos as normal, move them around the timeline, control the video clips or audio levels like every other video editor. Some things are a little bit difficult to edit. The workflow isn't great, but it's okay. The reason I say this is because I shouldn't need to click on so many different things to put a simple text on top of a video, you know. So back to the question, is this a real editor? Well, yes it is, but from my understanding, Hitfilm is more of a visual effects tool first than a regular video editor. Basically, they try to combine them both together. It has a color grading tool and lots of visual effects you can use, and it can probably save you a lot of money compared to buying Adobe Premiere Pro and After Effects together, if you want to make an indie film, that is. I personally don't use all the VFX. For other ones like After Effects or Vegas Effects, you don't actually want to use them as a video editor because they're more of an effects tool than an actual video editor. But in this case, Hitfilm is an actual video editor and an effects tool at the same time. Let's move on to the actual video editors to consider. Avid Media Composer. I cannot review this product, nor can I recommend it because it doesn't support MP4 or MKV file types, I think. I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but I mean, it says it supports MP4, but I don't know, it's not working. MP4 is a pretty common file type and things should be easy. I tried converting the MP4 to MKV and that doesn't work either, and other file types. I don't know if I have to go download another plugin, codec, or whatever, but again, things should be easy. I have two monitors and I can't even switch them or rearrange the screens the way I want. Sometimes I want to keep my second monitor clear so I can do other things, or sometimes I want my main monitor to edit the video and my second monitor to view the video, but I can't even do that here. I can keep on trying to make things work, but I'm going to pass simply because I know it's going to take me an entire day of messing around before I can even try to use it. Basically, it's a waste of time for me. Look here, I may be a random guy on the internet saying this and that, and it sounds like I'm being negative and talking bad things about the product. As you can see, I do edit videos, and I actually have tried to use it. Imagine if this was you. What would you do? Would you give up and try something else instead? Like, there's plenty of other software you can use. If you're going to be in the entertainment industry like Hollywood or TV, that's just too bad. You're probably stuck with it. If your company has Avid Composer set up working great, awesome. If not, then I don't know what to say. Like, what you guys need to understand is the real reason why everyone uses Avid is because they're one of the first video editing companies out there. And a lot of people don't want to move on, especially when they already invested a lot of money in the ecosystem. These companies already bought the pro-grade storage, mixing decks, and all of it. Next, we have Final Cut Pro X or 10. This is a Mac-only product, and I don't have a Mac Pro to review this properly, but I have used this like twice in my lifetime, and from what I remember, it's perfectly fine. Sorry, that's all I remember. If I was able to get it working as a kid, I'm sure you'll be able to get it working too. Moving on, we have Lightworks. It's free and confusing. The workflow is very different from any other video editor out there, that if this is your first time using it, then you're going to need to look up tutorials right away for something basic like how do I split a track? Well, the thing is you don't. Well, you can, but you don't split the tracks like you normally would. You would trim the clips with the ends. Never mind, the other tutorial lied to me. You can split tracks based on where you are on the timeline by pressing delete, or is it C? This is what I mean by it's very confusing at first. You can also nudge the tracks back and forth. Keep in mind that this is something that you cannot do in other video editors. For me, personally, I didn't like the way it worked because I'm used to splitting clips wherever and exactly on the point rather than nudging. You're also supposed to avoid copying and pasting stuff. Lightworks is not a cut and paste program. One thing to remember is everything you learn in Lightworks might not transfer over to other video editors that easily. I have heard other people say it was more intuitive and faster for them. It has been used in films like Wolf of Wall Street, 28 Days Later, or whatever, this and that. But none of that really matters if you can't make use of the software. If the workflow works for you, sure, use it. The major problem I see with Likeworks for me is that it's not intuitive and you'll have to spend a lot of time figuring things out. For me, it took me about an hour of Googling to get the basics down. I can see that if you're doing standard editing, it could be faster than any other editor out there. You also have to keep in mind professionals are using the Lightworks consoles with the wheel thing and some sort of like deck. So the whole nudging thing with the wheel makes sense in that kind of way. I think it heavily depends on your work style and what you're trying to do. From my experience, as a reminder, yes, I am some random guy you're listening to on YouTube, and I have actually tried the program. If I were to make the same video on Lightworks on my computer, it would make things 10 times harder and longer. Would I recommend Lightworks? Maybe. It depends if you like the workflow, that is. Sony Vegas. After using this for a while, from what I can say is Sony Vegas works fine. It's not difficult to understand. I think it's intuitive enough that if you're new, you won't be too confused on what's going on. The difference is to keep all the video and audio together so you don't lose track of them. But it may be messier when there are a lot of clips since there's less vertical real estate to see the videos on top because the audio tracks is taking up some of the space. You will have to search up some things since some things are hidden like the effects and transition or color grading tool. I like the fact that you can drag the whole timeline back and forth just by clicking on it. At the same time, it can be annoying if you misclick by accident. I like being able to pop out windows and rearranging them however I want. When you're working with a lot of clips, it really helps, and I have no idea how to put this back in. The downsides I see is the workflow is a little bit clunky. The playback isn't smooth after I apply certain effects and certain areas, and I'm not exactly sure why that is. Also, I don't like the way you apply effects. Yes, you can save effects presets, but I'm used to dragging and dropping the effects for faster editing. That way, I don't have to click on so many things to apply an effect I save. Also, when I'm sliding the timeline, I don't like how it slows down your scrolling when you're seeking. For me, it slows me down when I'm scrubbing through footage. Overall, it's perfectly fine for content creation. I have no problem recommending this to anyone who's new, other than there's like a few quirks you have to get used to. It's pretty standard, but if you're planning to get into video editing professionally, I think it's better if you switch to a faster editing program to save time. Adobe Premiere Pro. As you can see, I'm currently editing this exact video on Adobe Premiere Pro. Just like the other editors, it has a standard timeline where we can have multiple video and audio layers. It has some visual effects, color grading tool, and other effects. When we first get started, some things are a little bit confusing. For example, what is this sequence setting thing, and what is all this confusing setting stuff? The sequence settings is basically the resolution, frame rate, file type, or whatever you want to create your video in. And if you're like me and you're lazy, you can forget about all that. Especially when you're new, it's probably going to confuse you even more if you mess with it. When you have different clips, you're not sure what resolution, format, frame rate, or file type, and other things that you don't know about. As you can see here and in my other videos, I don't always work with the same settings. In fact, a lot of the clips that I work with have different resolutions and frame rates. What you can do is you can close the box and dump in the clip with the resolution that you want. Then right click and click on the new sequence from clip. Ta-da! Now you can start doing your work. So for the file format and frame rate or whatever, you can choose those things later when you render your video. For now, it doesn't matter that much. What matters is your base resolution. When you're editing videos in Adobe Premiere, I like that you can create video or audio points on the clips itself to control the levels for transitions. Half the time when I'm working on these points or keyframes, they're usually too small for me to click on. So sometimes I end up creating keyframes in the effects controls to give myself more precision. Anyways, the main difference between the Adobe Premiere Pro and the other video editors that we looked at is this is very apparent, and even if you use Adobe Premiere Pro for a while, a lot of people have missed this. If we go here into our effects controls and right click on the effects that we just used, we can save these effects as presets. What that means is we get to save a whole bunch of time. You can apply the same motion or effect to multiple clips. This is one of the hidden little secrets that most people don't notice. Another thing that isn't well known in CS6 but more well known in the new CC version is that we can create an adjustment layer. What the adjustment layer does is it allows you to apply the same effect onto other layers below it. So you don't have to apply the same effect over and over again manually. This is what I mean by workflow, usability, and intuitiveness. Honestly, I wish Adobe would make things more apparent. Like, who would actually know to click on this itty bitty little icon at the bottom of the screen and then click on adjustment layer? Nobody would notice this. Now, some of you guys might be wondering, what is the difference between Adobe Premiere Pro CS6 and a new Adobe CC version? The new Adobe CC version has more effects like speed ramping and a slightly better workflow. I believe there are some other new color grading stuff which I rarely use since I don't record a lot of real life things. Then there's some new masking features, transitions, or whatever. If you're doing standard editing, things didn't really change that much, so it's almost the same. From what I remembered in the past, there used to be a bug with certain videos where the video and audio would desync for certain file types like MOV, WMV, or AVI. Or maybe it was just Adobe Premiere Pro in general. I don't remember exactly since it was two different bugs of the same thing with the same outcome. Basically, if your audio is recorded at a variable bit rate, it will have trouble syncing up correctly since the frame rate and the audio rate are moving at different speeds from each other. To fix this problem, you have to convert the video file. This same problem actually happens with other video editors in the past, so it's not just Premiere Pro. Nowadays, I don't ever really see this problem. I have been recording my own videos and rendering compressed video files, so I don't know if this problem actually still exists or not. Well, it shouldn't happen anymore. The last thing I have to say about Premiere Pro is for the CS6 version, if you're rendering your video at 1920 times 1080, you're perfectly fine. Your computer will use like up to 10 or 12 cores. But when you're rendering at ultra wide resolution 3440 times 1440 at max settings, your computer only uses 2 cores and your 10-minute video could take up to like 12 hours to render. Just make sure that you uncheck the max quality settings and it should work fine again. I'm not exactly sure what the issue is with the encoder. The current version of Premiere Pro I have is outdated, and this is why I was actually looking for another alternative a while back. Maybe I'll go back to making videos in 1920 times 1080, or maybe not. I don't know yet. For the new Adobe CC version, I don't know if the rendering issue still occurs, since I don't have the new version to test it out. But for sure, the new Adobe CC version has higher rendering settings like 4K, 8K, so it should be fine. Being able to render 4K or 8K video isn't that big of a deal right now, since most people don't have 4K monitors yet, so we have some time. Finally, we have Davinci Resolve. Since we already talked about rendering video, if you have a Threadripper or a workstation, currently Davinci Resolve is the only video editing program that will use all the cores and your graphics card on your computer. And no other editing program is capable of that, which means you get to save an enormous amount of rendering time if you have a Threadripper or a workstation. However, Davinci Resolve will be confusing when you first start, and the workflow isn't as great as Premiere Pro. Let me explain. Assuming that you're new, you are going to be confused. First off, you don't just import a clip, create a new timeline, and start working on your project like Premiere Pro, or even create a new sequence setting. You have to click on another tab at the bottom called Edit. Now things will start to be more familiar to you. You will have a blade to cut or split your tracks. You can move the clips around the different layers like every other video editor, but when you start getting into it, for me, I was used to working in Premiere Pro, so when I splice clips and delete, I press the wrong delete button all the time and I end up doing a ripple delete instead. For the people who don't know, a ripple delete is where it deletes the clips and moves the other clips so there's no gaps. These are the little things you kind of have to get used to. I never had this problem when I was trying out Hitfilm or Sony Vegas. If you're cutting from a Final Cut Pro or Avid Media Composer, you might not need that much of a transition phase. Davinci Resolve also has this cool little side panel where you can add keyframes similar to Premiere Pro. But you can turn certain things on or off, or undo whatever you did to reset the settings. However, there isn't a way to save individual effects. Davinci Resolve also has an adjustment layer the same as Premiere Pro, which is great and is also easy to find too, but it doesn't work with motion and scaling. For me, as you saw a little bit from the way I edit in my other videos, where I use a lot of motion, cropping, and transformations, even though I didn't use as much in this video, if I were to recreate the same video in Davinci Resolve, it would end up taking a ridiculous amount of my time, simply because I can't save the general effects I usually use, and the adjustment layer isn't a replacement. It would be very annoying for me to do all those little micro edits. I would have to change the way I make videos if I use Davinci Resolve. Another thing you need to know is when you save your project, everything is saved in a database. So if you want to move your project to another computer, there is no project file to move. What you can do is you can export your project so you can import it again on another computer. Now here's another funny little thing you need to know. When you want to render your project into a video, you don't go to File and Export. You actually go to the bottom delivery tab, but stop right there. You don't render yet. You have to add it to the render queue, and then you can render your project into a video. Basically, the idea is that professionals would do all their work at once and render all their videos at the same time with their super fast workstations. This is what I mean by if you're new, you will be confused when you start. There are a lot of these little quirks you have to get used to. Now that you already know what to expect by watching this video, you already saved 3 to 4 hours of confusion. The question is, why was Davinci Resolve made this way? Premiere Pro actually does the same thing with Adobe Media Encoder, but they actually do all these things for you secretly, so most of you don't notice it. The reason why Davinci Resolve was made this way is the same reason why Hitfilm and After Effects was built as an effects tool first. Davinci Resolve started as a professional color grading tool first. That is why the user experience is like this. They had color grading in mind and video editing second. People will do the color grading or create effects in After Effects or Davinci Resolve first. Then they bring the videos into a standard video editor like Premiere Pro or Final Cut Pro or Avid. This is why Davinci Resolve has a dedicated tab at the bottom for color. Look at the amount of color control they give you. It's just that over time they made huge improvements and turned it into a full-fledged video editor. So now that we talked about so many different video editing programs, in conclusion, the winner is iMovie and whatever the default video editing app you have. Thanks for watching. See you guys later. But really though, if you're new, you should use the default free video editing app that comes with your computer for a week. From what we saw, I couldn't test Avid Media Composer or Final Cut Pro, and if you're working at a company or school, you're pretty much stuck with it. You're on your own for that one. I give Lightworks a maybe. Davinci Resolve and Sony Vegas is perfectly fine once you get used to it. Overall, I think Premiere Pro has the best workflow. Also, the entire Adobe Creative Suite works together with each other, but things aren't that simple. We have to talk about money, and money is a factor. If you have money, you can get whatever you want. However, some of us are on a budget. I think this first combo with Davinci Resolve would be a good option, and maybe we can use Hitfilm as the effects tool. They are free, so you're not losing anything. You might as well give them a try. Then there's Sony Vegas and Premiere Pro. Currently, we're in this huge culture of never owning anything and renting services like Spotify, where you don't actually own your music. Some of us still actually prefer to own our own music. So if you're that kind of person who wants to own your own video editing program for $300, Vegas is the only option. We used to pay full price for Adobe products, but Adobe decided to change their business model. Premiere Pro CS6, the one I currently have, is the last one you can actually own. Now we have to pay $21 a month or $240 a year to rent Premiere Pro. It's kind of expensive. Once we start adding an effects tool and other things to go along with our video editor, we have Vegas Post that includes Sony Vegas Pro, Vegas Effects, the After Effects alternative, Vegas Image, the Photoshop alternative, for $1,000 or $21 a month for the first year. They currently have some kind of promotion going on right now at this time that I'm making this video. It's usually $37 a month. On the Adobe side, if you want After Effects, that's another $240 a year. So in total, it's $480 a year. And the moment we throw in Photoshop, you might as well get the entire Adobe Creative Cloud that gives you everything for $600 a year. I know it's expensive, and Adobe is trying to make a really compelling reason for you to buy their Creative Suite. If you're a student, you can get the Creative Cloud for $20 a month, or $240 a year, which is more affordable. But the catch is they're trying to get you into the ecosystem, kind of like how Apple gets you to buy an iPhone and use iTunes. I'm running out of space on this chart, but you guys really have to think about this. Basically, we have 3 different options, and there isn't a clear-cut answer. Do you need an effects tool like After Effects? Do you need Photoshop? Do you need Adobe Audition? For me personally, I rarely use After Effects. The only time I use After Effects is for my intro and other minor things. We can have cooler effects, but I'm lazy and I don't have time to do all that. So I try to do everything in Premiere Pro. I actually use Photoshop a lot with Premiere Pro when I'm making these kind of videos. For audio, honestly, I never touched Adobe Audition. I just use Audacity and call it a day. It does everything I need. I know schools have been pushing Adobe Creative Cloud into every classroom, but if you just want to edit videos, Davinci Resolve is perfectly fine and is free. We have to be realistic and ask ourselves, are you really a YouTuber or a professional? Are you getting paid in any way to make videos? Did you even consider being a content creator or being a professional filmmaker or video editor? For me, I do make content, as you can see, just not a lot, but I'm not a YouTuber and I don't get paid to make videos. So I wouldn't pay for the Adobe Creative Cloud. I'm pretty much going to use what I have as long as I can, and maybe use Davinci Resolve as a replacement for my outdated Premiere Pro later on. Originally, I thought Premiere Pro would be a useful skill to learn and I might use it on a job one day, but that never happened and people didn't care. There are also people I knew who said they used to make videos or they're going to be making videos. None of them actually made professional quality videos except for one person. Let's be clear, when I say professional quality, I mean something that a company or a small business would possibly pay. On that note, I will let you guys think about it. What is your budget and what are you trying to achieve?